What do my gente, your boys coming through once again. And on today's video, we're going to talk about La Batalla de Puebla, 5 de Mayo. A lot of people celebrate this day, but not everybody actually knows what happened on this day, right? Or what actually ended up happening. So this is a battle that was won by Mexico, right? Against the French army. But there was actually a war that lasted 6 years in where Mexico lost, you know? What is the big deal of 5 de Mayo? The big deal is that actually the French people had a bigger army. It was well equipped and they were professionals. They were used to combat against a Mexican army that didn't have enough experience, was poorly equipped, and it was basically built out of campesinos and indigenous. Let's not forget that around this time, French was the number one army and Mexico was barely getting on their feet. So the big deal about this war is that Mexico ended up winning a battle with the number one army. Before we continue with this video, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. Support the channel. I do highly appreciate it. So everything started in 1861. Benito Juarez came into office after being in battle for 5 years, a civil war between the liberals and the conservatives of Mexico, in where basically Juarez came into office. He understood and noticed that Mexico didn't have resources. They wasted a lot of money. They borrowed a lot of money because of this wars, and now they had to pay, right? They owe Great Britain, France, and Spain. So in October of 1861, Benito Juarez signed a law basically saying, you know what, for 2 years, we're not going to pay our dues to these 3 countries. And we're going to concentrate on lifting up our country, right? This was not the first time that this has ever happened. It has happened before. So Benito Juarez didn't think nothing of it, right? It was like, man, you know what? Probably they're going to tell us, hey, man, you better pay or otherwise. But the intention of Mexico was actually to pay, right? It's like, you know what? Give me 2 years and it's going to be a good. Eventually, France, Spain went to London, got in a meeting with Great Britain, and basically got together and they were like, you know what, let's go to Mexico and ask for our money. Let's see what's going on. The only thing that these 2 countries didn't know is that France had a hidden agenda. They were not trying to go to Mexico to collect money. They were trying to go to Mexico to conquer Mexico. End up landing on Veracruz. Once they landed in Veracruz, the president sent somebody to talk with these individuals to try to get a deal and basically tell them, look, we're going to pay you, but just give us 2 years. Trust me, we're going to pay you. But as he sent somebody, he also talked to one of the generals and told him to build an army. You know, it was Army del Oriente, built by Ignacio Zaragoza. Once Ignacio Zaragoza was gathering all these people and trying to train them, right, to get ready, because just in case something happened, Benito Juarez was informed that actually Great Britain and Spain were good with deals and decided to take off, right? As for the French people, they had a different agenda. They decided to stay. March 5th, 1962, the French army got to Orizaba. And right here, it was when Mexico and France had their first battle, in where basically Mexico became defeated. But what happened on this occasion? Mexico got motivated, like, man, we just fought the number one army in the planet, and we were able to at least keep them down, but still they were more powerful than us. So with this battle loss, they decided to go straight to Puebla and give the notice that the French people are going up north to hit Puebla. And so the plan was basically like this. Ignacio Zaragoza had the job of basically stopping the French army in Puebla, so Mexico City can have enough time to build an army and trying to defend themselves, right? So that was the plan. They knew that they were against a powerful army that hasn't lost in 50 years, and they were willing to risk their life. In this battle, they also participated 4 different generals: Porfirio Díaz, Miguel Negrete, Felipe Monsalve, and Francisco de la Madrid. These 4 generals play an important role in this battle. Why? Because these individuals, especially Porfirio Díaz, who basically his army was built with individuals from Oaxaca. Let's not forget, it's 1862, man. Most of the army is built by indigenous people, right? There's there's an army that was the Sexto Batallon. It was basically built by nothing but indigenous people that didn't know how to speak Spanish. Individuals were the first one to take the battlefield, man, actually win the first attack from France. So as the French people start getting closer to Puebla, right? Some generals were waiting for them on Fuerte de Guadalupe y Loreto. The French people, once they got to Puebla, the guy who was in charge of the French army sent a letter to Napoleon III and basically was saying, Mexico is mine. They were not a match to us, right? Basically looking down upon Mexicans. But what this individual didn't know is that the Mexican army, even though they didn't have weapons like the French army, were going to fight non-stop. Now, one thing that a lot of people didn't know is, remember, they just finished a civil war. So the ones who are fighting are the liberals. So what happened? An army of conservatives was sent to help the French people. Ignacio Zaragoza decided to basically divide his army because he was conformed out of 4,700 and basically 2,000 soldiers and send it up north of Mexico to fight a Mexican army that was going to come and aid the French people, right? Once the battle was over, there was nobody who was going to come into the battle from the back, right? So it was basically all the concentration, it was going to be in South of Puebla. So the battle started with the cannon blast. French army sent 4,000 men, including their elite team, the Swaves, who was conformed mostly by African individuals, right? The Swaves, their elite group, was known to be vicious, right? And who they were going to fight against? They fought against the Sexto Batallon. They fought against nothing but indigenous. Weapons of this indigenous was only a machete. So with the machete, they went into war. The generals, the officials had a weapon, but the rest of the army was basically armed with machetes and kitchen knives. Let's not forget that this army, there were kids that were like 13 years old to 16 years old, you know, because they needed all the people that they could get. Still, they couldn't compete with the numbers that France brought. So the French army, full of confidence and arrogance, they sent those 4,000 soldiers, thinking it was going to be an easy win. You know, the Mexicans, they don't have nothing. They don't know nothing about war. We're going to take over. And little did they know that these Mexicans were going to fight until the wheels fall off. The thing about these indigenous that were fighting on the first battle is that they didn't know no Spanish. So nobody could tell them who they were fighting against. Basically, the elite team of France. And they end up winning the first attack. Also retrieve, and they send more army. As the French people send more of his army to attack the Mexican defense, it started raining. Porfirio Diaz and his group of Oaxacas were basically taking over. Not to mention there were Poblanos who were throwing rocks to the French army. So Mexico had individuals with machetes, with throwing rocks, with kitchen knives. When the army people, they had weapons. They shoot bullets. And still, Mexico ended up winning. Ended up pushing the French army far away, in where the French army lost 700 soldiers that one day in a battle that lasted 9 hours. And the Mexican army only lost 200 soldiers. When the Mexican army noticed that they won the battle, it was when a Mexicano was able to grab the flag from French and was able to take it down. This is a stamp on paintings, and this is the wonderful of this battle. It was a battle that it was destined for Mexico to lose. There's no way they could take down the number one army, right? But that one day, with army full of volunteers, full of individuals that didn't even have a real weapon, they still managed to win this battle and send French out of Mexico. Eventually, the French came back, and that's when they took over Mexico. There was no way Mexico could compete with the number one force. But this is what Cinco de Mayo is about. It was a battle in where basically Mexico beat France and proved everybody wrong, you know, and basically saying this: van a respetar el águila mexicana. So with this being it, we are out to next video. Muchas gracias. Hopefully you like this quick story. Al ratos.